I can cover. So I didn't prepare any specific slides for that purpose. Anyway, let us see because we see a lot of panelists already, a lot of participants already in. So let people join already. See 149.
for coming on.
I am a life scientist, and I do not even claim to put myself on the same level as the three distinguished panelists. I'm here from the side of the audience to try and figure out how we could understand this problem that has beset the whole world, and what are the strategies that are being adopted to tackle it, and where are the leads that will give us hope in the days to come. I have with me, as I said at the beginning, three distinguished panelists. I have Dr. Bakulesh Kamar, who is Executive Director of Cadila Pharmaceuticals. Dr. Kamar is well known as a scientist in his own right, with many ideas and inventions to his credit. He's extremely well known in the world of life sciences and in the world of pharmaceutical research. I also have with me Dr. Sameer Brahmachari, who has been the Director General of the CSIR, and that is when I got to know him. Again, an extraordinary scientist with a vast vision and enormously creditable research of path-breaking nature. I also watched firsthand when he used this entire public participation on open source drug discovery for tuberculosis. I also have with me Professor Madan Chaturvedi, who was the first director of the Cluster Innovation Center of the University of Delhi, where many pioneering activities took place, including in the life sciences. We had set up a program of collaboration between the MD Anderson Cancer Research Center, Pierre Marie Curie University, at the Patel Chest Institute of Delhi University, and the Cluster Innovation Center to look at Ayurvedic techniques from a molecular biology viewpoint, and Madan Chaturvedi Saab was heading that effort on our behalf. He has also pioneered research at the MD Anderson Cancer Center in many aspects of Ayurvedic treatment. So I welcome all three panelists to this discussion. As I said at the beginning, we are looking at how best to understand this virus, how best to learn what we can do about it, and why we should have some reason of optimism. I want the panelists to particularly seek ways and means, without exaggerating, without misleading, which none of you will, to give reassurance not just to our audience, but to the country at large, that perhaps we should not fear the virus as much as people are fearing it. This does not therefore mean we should be careless. This does not mean we should take our chances. But your strategies, your ideas are going to give us some hope. As the discussion goes on, I will in between interject with questions, queries, and seek clarifications. You will have to learn to be patient with me. I'm addressing the panelists now. Please learn to be patient with me. I will dumb questions. I may be tedious, but sake of not just my being, but for the sake of the audience. And I think it would be the fitness of things. We might ask Dr. Kamar to lead the discussion by giving us some idea through a slide presentation that he has with us on the situation at hand. Dr. Kamar, may I invite you to give us an overview of your slide?
Pandemic, which was not seen with any other virus in near future. Early on, like kidney, like heart. So all these organs are affected early on, unlike other pneumonia. In other pneumonia, these organs get affected very late, if at all they get affected. And in the lung, it gives a peculiar phenomena, which is known as thrombosis of a small vessels. And this peculiarity of this virus makes it unique compared to pneumonias. Next slide. So if you have a normal immune response, the body will react to the virus entering, and they will eliminate the virus. And while eliminating the virus, it will create something which is known as a memory response, and this memory response protects you from subsequent infection coming from the same organism. But if the response is inadequate, then you succumb to the virus and you have a disease, and this disease is progressing till you are able to counter the virus adequately. Next. Immune response, which body generates to fight this infection are of two types: innate immune response or innate immunity, and adaptive immune response or adaptive immunity. Innate immune response is the first and last response of the body, which is typically mediated through something called complements, which are typically present in the fluid part of the body. And then there are cells which wanders around the body. Like macrophage, neutrophil, dendritic cells. And these are first and fast response. And if they are efficient, virus as it enters, they get killed and you don't get infection. Then the next is the adaptive immune response. And this is typically all the vaccine uses this adaptive immune response. And you generate antibody against the specific antigen. And when the virus enters, that antibody neutralizes the virus and you don't get the infection. When you get infected, this adaptive immune response generated a little late, and that may help you small vessels. And this peculiarity of this virus makes it unique compared to pneumonias. Next slide. So if you have a normal immune response, the body will react to the virus entering and they will eliminate the virus. And while eliminating the virus, it will create something which is known as a memory response, and this memory response protects you from subsequent infection coming from the same organism. But if the response is inadequate, then you succumb to the virus and you have a disease, and this disease is progressing till you are able to counter the virus adequately. Next. Immune response which body generates to fight this infection are of two types: innate immune response or innate immunity, and adaptive immune response or adaptive immunity. Innate immune response is the first and last response of the body, which is typically mediated through something called complements, which are typically present in the fluid part of the body. And then there are cells which wanders around the body, like macrophage, neutrophil, dendritic cells. And these are first and fast response. And if they are efficient, virus as it enters, they get killed and you don't get infection. Then the next is the adaptive immune response. And this is typically all the vaccine uses this adaptive immune response. And you generate antibody against the specific antigen. And when the virus enters, that antibody neutralizes the virus and you don't get the infection. When you get infected, this adaptive immune response generated a little late, and that may help you in overcoming the infection. It can also be through cell-mediated immunity, which is in a medical jargon or immunological jargon is called cytotoxic T cells, which are capable of killing the virus. Next. Now here comes, say if the immunity was responsible for killing the virus and antibodies generated get rid of the virus, but there's something which peculiarly happens in this particular infection. So this is a data from Italy cohort, and as everybody knows, Italy had a maximum calamity outside China in the developed world. So if you look carefully, the right hand part of the chart, it shows that IgG response, if it is lower in amount, you have a milder disease. And if you have a higher in amount, you have a severe disease. And this is something which is not echoing the conventional wisdom or conventional teaching. If you have a higher immune response, you should get rid of a disease or you should have a milder disease. While in COVID-19, this higher immune response is associated with a severe disease, while lower immune response is associated with a milder disease. And this immune response is supposed to be protective or defense mechanism. Next slide. Besides antibodies, the macrophage, which are part of the innate immunity, or CD8 cells, they neutralize or kill the organism by cell-mediated immune response. And then there are antibodies and complements which also kills the organism or does not allow the organism to propagate inside the body. So this happens when virus has not entered the cell. Next. So coronavirus virus, single-stranded RNA virus. Most important is one of the common human pathogens, and there are some coronavirus which are typically seen in upper respiratory tract infection like common cold, which are self-limiting disease. But COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2 is not a self-limiting disease in a general sense, and the reason which is believed to be is difference in the spike. Spike S protein is a glycoprotein trimer, and this protein gives the name to this virus as a coronavirus because it behaves like a corona or gives an appearance of a corona. Another peculiarity of this infection is it may remain asymptomatic in early stage, and it may remain asymptomatic till you get a severe disease, like which is manifested as a severe pneumonia occupying part of your lung, or you become breathless, or you have a renal insufficiency, or close to the death. And according to the recent article in USA, in NEJM or New England Journal of Medicine, 50% of the people were diagnosed to be asymptomatic. So asymptomatic, typically when you have infection, you develop symptoms when the viral load goes a particular amount, but this disease does not give you symptom in close to 50% of the people, and that's a unique feature of this disease. Next slide. The other unique feature of this disease is it generates a cytokine storm which is disproportionate to amount of viral load. And the cytokine storm is basically because of interaction of spike S protein with toll-like receptor, which are endosomal receptor like TLR4, TLR7. So it activates this TLR and downstream signaling pathway to create a cytokine storm. And this cytokine storm is again unique to this virus and this particular disease. And majority of the people don't die because of the viral infection, but they die because of the cytokine storm which is created by this virus. Next slide. We jump. Can we go back one slide? This slide is from a Nature Immunology. It tells you that what are the options to treat this disease. So virus enters through ACE, and probably you can stop that, but ACE inhibitor is a doubtful. Somebody says it is useful, somebody says it is harmful. So there is no current opinion which is consensus opinion about ACE inhibitor. Virus once enters the cell, it propagates and divides and multiplies. At that point in time, you can use antivirals like remdesivir, which is recently approved, and then it comes out, and then it interacts with the immune mechanism, mainly innate immune system, and then it goes into the complement cascade, and it generates cytokine storm and a disease. Now, when it is trying to interact with the immune mechanism, you can have inhibitors of the each pathway. When it goes into the complement activation, you can have anti-C3 and anti-C5 complement antibody. Both of them are in the clinical trials now. Or when it has reached a full-blown disease and there's a cytokine storm, you can use any cytokine antagonist antibody like tocilizumab. And there are a couple of them which are being tried in the clinical trials. But eventually, if it remains restricted to the lung, it causes ARDS. That means the lung becomes stiff, it is not able to expand, it is not able to transfer the oxygen in a desired quantity. Another unique feature of this is typically in other diseases, when the person is unable to breathe and provide oxygen to adequate amount, he becomes breathless. While in this disease, there is a condition or even which is known as happy hypoxia. Person has a hypoxia to the tune of 60% of the required amount, but he does not feel that he is hypoxic. He is happy, he keeps doing all the activity, and he does not know the disease is progressing inside. And when he reaches the hospital, it is in a moribund situation and becomes difficult to salvage. Next slide. So this is how it behaves. So complement activation can be measured by measuring C3A in the serum. And if you go through this slide, C3A levels are significantly higher in persons who are infected, those who have mild disease, and they are almost 8 times higher in those who are moribund or significant or critical and get admitted into the ICU. So suggests that activation is in the disease, but nobody knows whether it's a cause and effect or an association. Next. This slide again shows the same thing from a lung tissue. So if you look at the autopsy, this is the autopsy of a person who died from a COVID-19, and then all these complement factors get deposited into the lung. So part of the disease activity is through a complement mediation. And then there are varieties. Next slide. There are varieties of complement which gets activated and deposited. So these are different types of complement. This typically, complement mediated activity comes from 3 different parts. One is known as a classical, another is known as the alternate, and third is known as a lectin. So this slide shows you lectin pathway is activated, and then you also have a, like C3A, you also have a C5A in the serum, which is significantly higher, and it keeps increasing as the disease progressing from a mild to the severe. So in other words, complement activation, which is a part of innate immunity, plays a role in disease progression and fatality associated with it. Next slide. This activity, the other part is this disease is proportionate to the age of a person, and this slide shows that natural immunity declines with the age, and this is a data showing IgM, which is part of the antibody which is normally present, and this IgM keeps declining with the age, and as you grow, your defense mechanism decreases, and so you are likely to suffer significantly severe disease, which is seen in the clinics also. Next. So complement activation does lot of activity, but essentially it is responsible for inflammation, vasodilatation, and coagulation cascade damage, which is seen in the lungs of the people who are severely affected with COVID-19. So one of the hypotheses which is floated is that complement activation plays a major role in this disease. Next. Now, immune mechanism seen in COVID-19 is identical to what is seen in gram-negative sepsis. So if you go through the slides on the left-hand side, it says that like COVID-19, gram-negative organisms, which are also intracellular organisms, they work through endosomal TLR. Here it is demonstrated as TLR4, And then there's a cascade of events which leads to cytokine storm and sepsis and death. So this is how there is a commonality between gram-negative sepsis and COVID-19 disease, though there are certain differences. One is caused by bacteria, another is caused by virus. When it happens through bacteria, there is endotoxin liberated and it affects multiple organs in the body to begin with. In COVID-19, initially it remains localized to the lung, but there is a significant damage done to the lungs before it moves to the other part of the body. But at the end, sepsis is seen in both the conditions. Luckily, next, we have a product which is called Sepsivac, which is approved in gram-negative sepsis. This product was developed under the NIMITLI program of CSIR, and it is now being evaluated for COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Kamar. I think this was an instructive way of getting to grips with what does this virus do, how does it affect us, etc. I think there are many issues that arise from here, and I saw exactly what the virus affects the lung, to breathe, is that, etc. But tell me, Dr. Kamar, what is this mystery that in India, in spite of the fact that number of deaths, and may God keep us like that, but the number of deaths in India is extremely small compared to the number of infections. How does that come about?
Okay, I mean, if I have to answer your question, I mean, say, if you look at number of deaths compared to number of infected individuals, it's no difference. It is only that because of whatever we did or whatever actions we did, number of infection has been controlled. But if you look at number of people getting infected or getting diagnosed COVID positive and dying because of COVID-19, there's no difference around the world. It remains in the range of 2 to 5%. I mean, last time when I looked at a data, it was 3.5% for India. So it is within the range. We are not outsider, or we are not somebody who is out in a medical term. We are not outlier to this problem.
Dr. Kamar, I have a little objection on this.
Please.
This is 2.87 for India. And if you look at a percentage of death, all the way go to 16% or 17% in some countries. So if you look at the plot, death per million or infection per million, it has a huge spread.
Yes.
And for example, Russia crossed the number of deaths. Russia has crossed number of incidents much higher than England, but number of death is 1/10 of England. All these numbers, I can tell you. It is very, very irony. What Dinesh has asked is a very important question. There is something. Our incidence decrease depends on lockdown and other activities. But our death is definitely lower than many of the developed countries. That, I think, you can see the numbers if you follow the numbers.
Yeah, so what I said is, sir, I mean, we may feel happy that our deaths are lower, but it falls within the range. We are not outliers, significantly different. So, I mean, I'll just add to whatever you are saying. Say, even in US,
17%.
deaths per million in black is lower than number of deaths per million in white. So this is a recent, today's NEGM has come out with that data. But this data will only tell you, because there are a lot of confounding factors, but if I have to hypothesize, then probably because we are more vulnerable to get recurrent infections compared to the Western world, these recurrent infections makes us stronger in terms of our immunity is little better compared to the people who have not been infected. We are exposed to varieties of infection. I mean, as a kid, my pediatrician friend tells me that if your son or a daughter does not get 10 to 12 episodes of fever and diarrhea in the first year, you are not worthy of living. So exposed to this infection all throughout. And probably that has given us some amount of immunity to fight better. But I'm looking at the data in a little different way than what others are looking. So I will still maintain that we are still not outlier. We are little better than the world, but we are not outlier.
Well, Dr. I don't want to get into this beyond the point and what Dr. Brahmachari said. Iran has a much smaller population, much smaller.
Yeah.
And yet Iran had, compared to its population, a fairly significant number of deaths. But Iran's deaths are much more than Spain, Italy, France, all of them. They are comparable in terms of population. And the virus, Iran did not even have a lockdown for a long, long time. Yet the deaths in Iran stayed really low compared to France, Italy, and Spain. And then I noticed Portugal, which is next to France, Italy, and Spain, has come out comparatively clean
Better.
compared to the other countries. So there is something happening here, and I think maybe Professor Madan Chaturvedi would like to say something about this. Would you have something to say, Professor Chaturvedi?
Fully agree with Professor Brahmachari's observation that yes, indeed, the rest of the world, it has gone up to 17% in some cases, and definitely is much higher than the Indian percentage of deaths. And I will just take it a little lateral to COVID-19 infection. If you go back into the past, there had been such kind of a pandemic and epidemic like SARS and MERS and others, and India always had a lower percentage of death compared to the other populations. So there is definitely something which needs to be analyzed and considered rather than just simply trying to come into the name of the statistics and trying to brush it off. It needs discussion, it needs debate, it needs some proper consideration. The point which I wanted to make.
There is a question I would like to ask to Dr. Brahmachari at this point. Dr. Brahmachari, I looked at the data for the diamond research, which was a completely closed environment. 3,700 passengers. And in spite of the fact that there were infecting and the virus had infected,
There is some background noise.
Can the technical process please take care of this noise? It seems to have gone.
Now you're okay. There's no noise. You can go ahead.
Thank you. Good. So I'm glad. Sometimes technology can also be an impediment. It depends so much on technology, but sometimes it can be an impediment also. Anyway, so the Diamond Princess data has always, confounded me. That 3,700 passengers, a closed environment, and only 17 deaths and some 300 odd people got infected. What do you think could have happened? There's something mysterious about this virus that I'm not able to get hold of through the scientific literature that as a layperson I've accessed. Would you have some insights on that, Dr. Bhagat?
You can see 3,700, as you said, 19% were infected, about 700, of which 12 died. Most of the people were elderly. So if you realize that 80% of the people, do not get infection, I think Indian data also is showing, because I will share with Mr. Kamar, that if you look at it doesn't transmit to everybody because of the extent and dosage. So if you are repeatedly exposed, for example, you are in a choir or you in a room where you are confined and then you are repeatedly exposed. That is why doctors and frontline workers getting infected, because they're repeated. It's a dosage dependent. So if you get a very mild dose, nothing may happen. So therefore, the reason that there is a clear case that even in a community like big slums of India, everyone is not getting affected. We know it. Otherwise, today Bombay would have had 100,000 deaths, right? But that has not happened. Okay, so where social distancing is impossible. So therefore, to my opinion, about 80% of the people do not get infected for some reason or the other. That's what immunology will tell us. And among those who get infected, again, another 50% to 80%, depending on the country, it could be asymptomatic, which means that they get the virus, they raise the antibody, whatever it is, they get the protection by IgM, whatever it is, innate immunity, and it doesn't happen. So if you take these numbers, then you realize eventually a very small percentage of people are critically unwell and they go into the hospitalization. Just to taking back your question, percentage and all, I have been looking at the World Tracker data, and I'll get back to you with the World Tracker data and what we find. How I've looked at the world, all coronavirus infection as well as death per million across the world, 180 countries. I've also looked at infections and death per 100,000 people who get tuberculosis. As you understand, the Cadila project with MW vaccine is already maybe showing results. I don't know. He may tell us, but I know it is a fantastic possibility of cytokine surge inhibition. So therefore, what Dr. Kamar has very clearly shown, that there is a unique balance in our immune system, in which if you have become hyper-reactive, you might be critical and you get into, because of cytokine surge, you get died. Now, what is the cytokine surge? It's something like this. There is a terrorist who enters and you bring all your army of the border into that handling a terrorist group in Jammu, and you open up your border, and then you are invaded. So it's exactly that happens when a cytokine surge means you are so strong immune response that you actually divert all your attention. So the bacteria and others then take over and you die on sepsis. So the possibility is that older people do not have enough response. So therefore they get infected. So there are also lots of healthy people getting infected. You have seen in America, gym instructors, all sorts of strong body health people with healthy people got infected. And there could be the cytokine surge as responsible. So I think the Cadilla's approach, I'm sure he didn't tell he kept it very low. I think is one of the, according to me, will be one of the first savior treatment India might have. And I'm very proud that it is a CSIR initiative on this W. I'm sure Kamar may explain a little more what is that you are doing, and that will make people a little more happy and positive. So far I'm concerned, I'll come back to you with the numbers, exact numbers, because my numbers are on my iPad, and I'm using my iPad to do. So I have to bring my numbers on my mobile phone.
Please do that. And in the meantime, I would ask Dr. Kamar, if it is not very confidential, could you enlighten us a little bit with your Cadila work in the context of the virus?
Okay, so basically, as I mentioned, this product is approved for gram-negative sepsis in India. And if those who know, there is nothing in the world which has succeeded in the treatment of gram-negative sepsis. So gram-negative sepsis, like COVID-19, is caused by gram-negative bacteria, but people don't die because the antibiotics don't work. In spite of the effective antibiotic, people die. That organism creates changes in the immune environment of the body, and cytokine storm like a situation, multiple organ failures. So those who have been into the ICU or a critical care area, or the relatives, they will know that doctor will tell you that, okay, you have infection in the lung, but your kidney is not functioning, your heart is not beating properly, or your brain is not functioning. This is called as a multi-organ or failure. So that, I mean, and everybody has tried to do a single, I mean, in the medical jargon or pharmaceutical jargon, it is called as target approach. So you have one cytokine increase, you target that cytokine, and with that cytokine you reduce, but nothing has succeeded. The last failure, the major setback was Eisai product, which went into phase 3 and failed. So because they are doing targeted approach to a single target. What we realized early on, this is close to now 17 years of work, and we went to CSIR around 12 years back with all data to convince them it's a good product to take it forward. And in that, what we realize is this is not a single target. It works on multiple targets within the sepsin chondrum. So it works on the TLR which are expressed, and the beauty of this is TLR overexpressed because of the gram-negative organism, it gets regulated, down-regulated. But the TLR which are not affected by gram-negative organism, it gets upregulated to a significant amount. So your body's immune response to fight infection is persist, while bad part of the immune mechanism gets controlled. So with that, we did a lot of, then now it is a clinic. But what we have realized is while it controls the change in the cytokine and responses, it also controls the infection. So in the clinical trial which we did, the infection control where we gave this MW was faster compared to the people who did not receive MW. It was not only getting rid of the immune mechanism, but infection control was also faster. And they were getting out of the ICU faster, and this is significant in terms of almost by 50%.
What phase trials with?
We had done phase 3. We did phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. All the 3 are done, and it is now. So while we were in the process of getting approval and getting the next level of commercializing, COVID-19 popped up. And then we started looking at it, and then we realized that there are so many commonalities between gram-negative sepsis and COVID-19. And then MW is potent innate immune response enhancer, and it has been found to be helpful in getting rid of infection for varieties of reasons in varieties of pathogens. And there is a terminology, new terminology, which is called as pathogen agnostic response. So innate immunity does not have to recognize a particular pathogen or an organism. It can clear irrespective of what is the pathogen characteristic. So with all that, and with the approval of gram-negative sepsis and whatever, I mean, our excitement associated with it, CSI and we work together to identify how do we take it forward and provide an option for a COVID-19. And then the people who had used this in a gram-negative sepsis, some of the investigators started using without our knowledge in a COVID-19 and gave us a good data that it works in COVID-19. That's a very preliminary anecdotal data, but that anecdotal tells us that the people who are critically ill, they become better and they get out of ICU, and then viral clearance is becoming faster. So all that anecdotal data is there, but what we are evaluating now is there are 3 trials which are approved by GI, and trial 1 evaluates those who are critically ill. And with the standard of care, if we add MW, does it make a difference? We hope it will make a difference. The second part is those who are not critically ill, but they have significant other diseases or significant other abnormalities which needs hospital treatment. So in those patients, can we prevent from going from a milder version of the disease to a severe form of a disease and get rid of the viral load and viral infection faster, and associated immune changes can we bring it back so that they do not progress and they recover and go home faster? So that's the second study. And the third study is that, as Dr. Brahmachari mentioned, frontline workers or close contacts of people who are highly vulnerable to get COVID-19. Can we prevent COVID-19 developing in this group of people? So these are the 3 studies which has been approved, and they are up. There are 4 institutes which are participating in the study, and they are registered in all the necessary portals. So if somebody goes to the CTRI or clinicaltrial.gov, they will get this information. Is that adequate?
Dr. Khamar, can I just quickly ask you some supplementary questions? So number one, since you've completed phase 3 trials, so obviously the safety of this medication seems to be okay. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay. In that case, what is the possibility of mass industrial production of the medication?
So how much number you need, I can provide you.
Oh, is that so? In that case, what prevents you from just widely distributing it? Even if it doesn't work, it's not going to harm.
Okay, so there are 2 parts to that.
No. Let me correct it. He has to complete. He got clinical trial approval for this for a different reason. Now, so he doesn't have to go through phase 1 and all, but he has to prove efficacy of this in COVID patients. So that data, I think he should be getting month end or beginning of next month.
Sir, I am not that fast forward like you are.
So as soon as it is in the control, that it has to be a double blind control, and I think once the double blind control data comes out, I think yes, he will be able to provide. Right, Dr. Khamar?
Okay, I'll answer that question in a different way. I wear 2 hats. I'm a medical professional, and I am also of the pharmaceutical industry. And when I wear different hats, I have different responsibilities.
Correct.
Medical professional, I'm allowed to use the drug which is approved for use in humans.
Absolutely.
I can use my discretion and use it wherever I want to use it, and I don't have to look at for which indication it is approved. So as a medical professional, as I mentioned, some of the investigators who knew this product have used it and have found some good results and communicated it. So as a medical professional, if somebody wants to use it, I can provide it. But as a pharma industry, I can't claim that this drug works in this indication.
Sure. Dr. Khamar, I have something to say. I'm a professional mathematician, and I would be the first person to advocate a double-blind study in everything that goes with the protocol. But in a situation like this, I have never understood, and there will be some things I want to discuss besides this point. But in this context, what prevents us from taking a population of 5,000 people, so giving them this medication and watching the results? And if 4,500 recover, then is that not proof enough?
Is it? But who will have those 5,000 people enroll? I am willing to give you a product, provided you have those 5,000 people and all necessary approvals, or you are willing to take that, lead. I am willing to give you product for 5,000.
Okay. So this needs to be seriously followed up, because something has been bothering me, and I would like, before we move on, if Dr. Brahmachari wants to bring in his data perspective, then please go ahead. Then I want to move on to something else.
Dinesh,
Yes.
One thing Dr. Khamar has made sure that if you and I go to an ICU with COVID, his MW therapy is available to us. You understand? So you and I are fine. I'm only... You have to understand what he has said. He has said, as a doctor, you can go ahead and give a treatment as long as the patient has agreed to take the treatment.
Yes.
Am I right? Understood?
Yes.
It is beyond any regulatory control. However, if you want to sell this as a product for COVID, you have to demonstrate on on a double-blind clinical trial that it has actually benefited people. Am I clear, Dr. Kamar? Hello, Dr. Kamar.
Lost his voice. Lost his voice.
Yes, sir, you are clear. You are absolutely clear. And
I must tell you, since he mentioned 12 years back he went to CSIR, I actually was forgetting the years. It just happened to be, I was in charge of CSIR that time.
You were there, sir. You were there.
So I was there. So therefore, I am very, very proud that you call Dr. Kamar the right person who will most probably take care of our life fast than anybody else, any other drugs or pharmaceutical that comes in.
I can see that. I can see that. And it gives me a great deal of reassurance. And I hope that our participants, the audience, is able to note this. Here is India leading the way in such a unique fashion, different from all other countries. This is good news for all of us.
But I want to, Dinesh, also the message should go that if you want something today, you cannot order a raffle today to fight a war today.
Absolutely.
In science, you can order a raffle and buy it in 1 year. But in science, you invest 20 years before. It is the 12 years back investment, both intellectual and resources, is what Cadila is ready today. It is the vision of father of Rajiv Modi. It is the great Mr. Modi's vision, who had great vision about India and India as a country and a pharmaceutical can do, and his investment. I'm sure Dr. Kamar will agree. It is the I Modi. It is through Industrial Modi and his vision. And today Cadila is continuing that culture. So therefore, it is, in my opinion, in science, it is individual. It is the Hamid of Sipla who gave the world HIV drug at an affordable cost for the whole world. So that was the contribution of Hamid. Although science was CSIR, that's fine. So I always say it is the visionary leaders of drug pharmaceutical of India who has given India what we have today as an affordable healthcare. So therefore, it needs an investment 10, 12 years back. It needs sustainability. It is not an overnight exercise. And that must be understood. Healthcare investment is a very important component, both from the side of institutions and government. Another is the industry. Right. You can see America has put $1 billion to Johnson & Johnson, $500 million to another company. But India, we don't do that, right? If we do that...
I think, Dr. Brahmachari, maybe this panel can make a recommendation to the government at this stage that they should set aside a significant sum for this kind of pioneering research and take a risk, because that will help this country economically in the long run. We cannot allow this moment to go by. I would urge my co-panelists to come together and let us petition the government to put aside a significant sum. It is so important.
And I tell you, this is the thinking process that one should start thinking. What is healthcare is a strategic asset. Today you realize $3 billion of Rafale will not protect Indian people. It is the healthcare which is what bothers. So we have seen how big economies can cripple, like American economy can cripple. So many trillions of dollars can be wiped out by an infection. So therefore, it is a global solidarity move of working together in one science. Another, government has to understand investment in biomedical research and in indigenous industry is a critical asset of this nation. And we must invest into those needs.
I agree with you totally, Dr. Brahmachari. In that context, I would like Dr. Madan Chaturvedi to enlighten me a little bit. You know, Dr. Brahmachari, Dr. Kamar, Madanji knows this, but you may not know this. When the coronavirus crisis began to attack India, and it began to gain entry into India in significant ways, I visited the websites of India's leading universities, one by one. Many of them have outstanding so-called colleges of medical sciences. And believe me, one of the highly ranked medical college, I will not name it here, one of the top ranked ones, I went on its website. The first thing it said was this website was updated almost 2 months ago. So for 2 months, and in those 2 months, the virus had struck India badly. The second thing, there was nothing on the website about the virus, nothing at all. There was one point which said, important notice. I clicked on that. It said, tender for this construction is to be given at this time, so on and so forth. It is a crying testament that in Indian educational system, the nurseries of this kind of ideas will have to be our university systems where undergraduates are exposed to good ideas. Dr. Brahmachari and Dr. Madan Chaturvedi worked at the Innovation Center at Delhi University with undergraduates to produce such outstanding insights. And Dr. Chaturvedi, I would like you, as also the former head of the Department of Zoology and the Director Innovation Center, if you could make some comments on this.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. One of the promise which I see in Dr. Kamar's MW therapy segment, because it is to be understood, he is targeting the end effect when the cytokine storm has taken place. Unlike to others, like Gilead's who are targeting viral replication or some therapeutic antibody like monoclonal antibodies who are trying to prevent the infection, these are likely to change. These viruses are changing very fast, and if you try to target those steps, you're likely that your therapeutic intervention may fail. Whereas, if you are targeting the end effect at the level of cytokine storm, this definitely will never fail, and this will always give a promising result. So from that angle also, I see a very promising approach which Cadillac has taken, rather than targeting the entry point, rather than targeting the point at which this virus has an ability to change very fast. And such therapy, people are claiming to be neutralizing monoclonal antibodies, many, I don't want to name the countries, but likely that if in the meantime, because the history says these viruses are very fast evolving viruses, and there is also a hypothesis operating that the virus by the time which has come to India, it might have been weakened, or the different country, it has a different kind of a mutations, the whole sequencing will actually at the end of the day tell you. But the fact is, if you are not going into those parts which can cause variations, you are targeting that part which will always be invariable, your therapy is always going to succeed. So I'm really very happy that you have targeted the end part rather than the beginning part compared to the other world which are hoping to cure it, which I am very...
That's very well put. That, you know, this is something that is far more likely to work than all the other kinds of therapies.
One more point I wanted to add at this point, because today it's a different aspect. Right now, since as a human being, it's a very unprecedented situation. It's very scary for all of us, the way the whole projection has come out. So all of us are concerned about therapy and cure. We don't want any hospital death of any near and dear ones, God forbid. But equally to be concerned is, as a biologist, what is the source of this? How would this virus has evolved? How this virus has developed high affinity binding to the human lung epithelial cells, which is called spike protein binding to the ACE2. Now, this is a debate which I don't want right now get into because it will be more of a basic debate. But what I'm trying to say to it, there is an emerging evidence, emerging scientific data, and computer simulation that this COVID-19 infection, which is caused by, as we named it, SARS-CoV-2, this receptor binding is still not yet appropriate. It has not reached to the maximum binding ability. That means there is a possibility that in future this virus can become more virulent if it evolves as a better binder to the ACE2 receptor. And all such cases, this existing warning, which all of us must be aware about, that the virus is evolving, better binding is coming into. Equally, there is a warning, since this is a classical called zoonotic disorders coming from animal source, which is still to be debated. Has it is come directly from bat? Has it come through the pangolin? Now, pangolin hypothesis only in the last week paper has been discarded. That no, can never come from pangolin. But nonetheless, the bats are good reservoir, and there is a possibility. Way back in 2015, it has been already demonstrated that many more such virulent viruses, which may cause more severe symptoms, may be in the offing. And in all these, if you put together, targeting the receptor binding, targeting those points, would every time a new virus comes into, you have to change the strategy. But if you target invariable reasons, like when the infection has proceeded and where you need a maximum hospital care, such antibody approach is going to really work. So we have to be aware about the virus is a parasite. It is equally evolving. The therapeutic antibody approach, it will try to overcome, it will try to change itself. And therefore, our approach has to be innovative, and that is where the Kerala has taken an innovative approach at that point of time. Now, last point I will add before, and I will hand over.
Please, please.
No, definitely in the Indian scenario, and I would like Professor Brahmachari's view and comment on my observation. In India, we have fairly good medical facilities, medical interventions as we claim to be. But we always have a very poor public health programs operating. If you remember very clearly, way back in 2013 or 12, we wanted to start a big public health program at Innovation Center. For some reason, it could not take place. Always our epidemiological data or Department of Epidemiology is good, but we keep waiting for some outbreak to happen, and then we start collecting data. Today we have a good cancer epidemiology, today we have a good TB epidemiology, but we never have a holistic health awareness program collecting data information, why we are so immune, or what is our innate immunity profile, which can very easily be done in a very limited number because those parameters are limited in nature. So in my opinion, while companies like Kerala and government are putting efforts for the intervention of disease, simultaneously, equally program has to begin of massive public health program and trying to generate the data from the Indian population all across, because we have a very varied population. We have economically varying population. We have a culturally different population. We have a population where food habits are different, lifestyles are different. So we need a massive program, and this is a right awakening time for India to wake up and start investing into very robust public health program. That is what one of my recommendations would be, which is timely needed at this point.
Yes, but Dr. Chaturvedi, I mean, don't you think that this is the responsibility of university systems that have strong life sciences and strong quantitative sciences? But as I have always observed to you and Dr. Brahmachari, I was on the governing body of one of India's leading medical institutes. They do not have a single full-time mathematician or a statistician. Even this other national institute that does all this immune work, they don't have a single mathematician or a computer scientist or a data scientist. How will you do gene-based pharmaceutical research? It's impossible to do that. Why are we fooling ourselves? Somewhere, India needs to awaken to this task of enabling our university systems to meet the needs and challenges of the nation. Our curriculum, our programs of study, they're just not happening that way. And that is why your effort at the Innovation Center also failed. We started facing difficulties from the external world. But I'm always an optimist, and I'm sure good things will happen. I'm very positive about that. Coming back to this discussion at hand on data, you know, there is this Israeli scientist, he's not really a life scientist, Isaac Ben Israel. I'm sure Dr. Kamal and Dr. Brahmachari have also heard of him. You have heard of him, Dr. Chaturvedi. He has studied data from various countries, and as little understood him. He says that essentially the virus plays itself out over a period of 70 days if you are in a reasonable environment, compact. It shouldn't be exposed to too many variations, stuff like that. And he has highlighted this with data from several countries. I wonder if anybody has any comment. Dr. Chaturvedi, you want to say something?
I just wanted to make a quick comment on your. It's a very, very important observation, and I think Dr. Kamar and Professor Brahmachari will definitely add more light on that one. See, each such infection, when a new kind of a virus emerges into, obviously its peak will go up. And remember, these are parasites. Parasites would never like to kill its host, because if the host gets killed, it's the end of the parasite. So even though they are called simple organisms, they are called a stretch of RNA, 30,000 base pair, or some lipid and some corona, they don't have a brain, ear, eyes, cognitive behavior like us. But molecularly, they are highly evolved organisms. They're surviving today. They know how to change themselves, how to combat themselves. So what I'm trying to tell at this point, whenever such thing happens, and only mathematical modeling can tell where it is going to come peak, and then this will come to an equilibrium. And then it will live with the population. This is where some people are saying the corona infection will not go. We have to live with it. They are right in saying so, because very quickly it will come to an equilibrium where there will be in a population asymptomatic. A lot of people will be carrier. Disease will not happen. Once in a while, few people will become, because depending upon the balance between their immune system and the virus load, will become infected like any other influenza or any other diseases. So very soon, the study is rightly predicting it will come to the equilibrium, and we will be much more better off at that point. Exactly the same thing happened for Ebola viruses. It picked up, and that was a little sad for the pharma industry. Apology to Dr. Kamar, because a lot of drugs were being tried by that time, and it came to equilibrium, it flattened out, and even the second trial of remdesivir also flattened out, and now they have come back again. So these are the biological phenomena. These are called host-parasite interaction, and where the large amount of data, and only biology will be able to come into picture. And you rightly said, universities are all, we are sleeping. Even if they are closed, we have no impact today on the society. We are all sitting home and doing webinar like that. So biology of parasite, host-parasite interaction, and its evolution in terms of the data of a particular disease will be extremely important to give the predictive nature of pathogenesis. This is what I wanted to add.
Thank you. Dr. Brahmachari, Dr. Kamar, I would like you to make brief comments on what Isaac Ben Israel says that Dr. Chaturvedi commented. I have a special example. I've studied some data in the small region of India where apparently it happens working. So I will tell you about it, but first I want to hear you out.
Kamar, you speak.
Okay, my turn. Okay. Okay.
I will comment for
Okay. So, like everybody said, so I'll just wear my medical hat and tell you from a public health perspective. So, from a public health perspective, all epidemics over a time gets converted into endemic. Epidemic is you have a significantly large number coming rapidly, and it is always looked at from a background. So what was the base and how it evolves? So because it has evolved across the world, this has been called pandemic. But all pandemic eventually will become endemic for varieties of reasons. One of the reasons which is talked about much more frequently than the others is called something called herd immunity. Even if you look at COVID-19, as Professor Brahmachari was saying, 80% of the people who are infected with COVID-19 and who are positive, they don't need any treatment. They are self-limiting disease and they don't progress. So there can be mild fever, mild cough, asymptomatic, and it dies. But they develop immunity as a part of the program. Those 20% who require some kind of a hospitalization, 15% will become all right, whether you do something or you don't do something. It is only in that 5%, which is critical, that you have a mortality rate ranging from 35% to 80%, depending on which country and which population you take. But rest of the people, they get all right. Now these people, if the number of these people keeps increasing as time passes, it creates something which is called as a herd immunity. You might have heard this in a polio eradication program, that if more than 90% of the population gets immunized, the disease will disappear. And that's what we have achieved in polio eradication. So one part is herd immunity. Other part is, as Professor Madan said, virus will try to adjust to the host, and host will also try to adjust to the virus. So there is some kind of a symbiosis going on. And then as a result of symbiosis, everybody tries to live together. Third part is, because of whatever intervention we do, I mean, we may not shelter to the virus. Fourth part is, virus itself will change, will not like the host, which was his preferred host. So there are multitude of factors, and all this comes into play when pandemic begins. And at the end, over a time, which is variable, but the last biggest pandemic was Spanish flu, and within 2 years, it disappeared. So there is a telltale story even today, but Spanish flu did not remain pandemic beyond 2 years. So this is what happens when there's a large number of people and pandemic of a nature takes place. Have I answered you appropriately?
Yes. Dr. Brahmachari, you want to say something on this?
You see, you see what his model, the Israel model, is based on the size of the population.
Yes.
And all mathematical model, with all apology to mathematicians, I have looked at all mathematical models made by everybody in the world, including Boston Consulting Group, on which NDTP is very critical today. I can see all models are wrong. All are useful. All mathematical models are wrong, but all are useful. I just want to tell you, in California, the Stanford model said there will be 250,000 deaths in California, and about 2.5 million people will be affected. Now, my nephew from Stanford sent me the whole model. I looked at it, very beginning. It's in February. Okay? And I was saying, the assumption there is that every interaction is random and everybody interacts with everybody. And once you have in your mathematical equation that everybody interacts with everybody, which is not true in a society. Society has a clustering. We only interact with certain type of people. So therefore, virus will never have an opportunity to get to Dinesh where you have never interacted with a group of population who are interacting with each other. So therefore, there is no mathematical model I have seen so far which has done district-wise, sector-wise, culture-wise.
Yeah,
I have looked at district by district India. Okay, district by district. And it's very interesting. You will realize that we have come down to 11 districts of the country, which is now contributing to 70% of our present infections, right? Because you have increased the probability of interaction between the individuals in those places. They are crowded places. Therefore, we need a mathematical model. This is my plea to my mathematician friend and all the fraternity of mathematicians, fellows of the national academies, that we need a mathematical model. You have seen Indian Institute of Science, JNCR mathematical model endorsed by Department of Science and Technology, where the middle of May, we should have had, I think, 35,000 deaths and 5 million affected, right? It's published. It's on the paper.
Yeah.
On that day, I only said, it's not possible. The reason is simple. You are using an equation where you are accepted equal interaction. Now look at the sociology. Japanese and Koreans wear masks even if they get a cold, as a culture. It is ill manners not to wear a mask in a culture. So culture protects them. If you look at Italian and Spanish, their young people and old people mix every weekend. There is a big supper. lunch or dinner where the grandparents with the grandchildren and family meet together. So that's their social culture. In France, every evening, people have to get together in those crowded restaurants. So this culture made a difference, right? In Germany, social interaction is very formal. So therefore, you can see Germany death is much less. The dosage of patients, the number of incidents. So mathematics is not taking care of that model. I suggest to you, come up with sociology-based mathematical model, which will make a difference. People thought Bihar, UP in India will be completely devastated. There is no health infrastructure. So I said, no, our social culture will protect us. Our social culture do not allow. If you have a chicken pox, the government doesn't have to take care of that guy, keep in the separate room. In our village, are much more smarter. They have practiced things long back. Okay. So therefore, I will say, this is not there in mathematical model. It's very difficult to do modeling.
Totally agree with you, Dr. Brahmachari. In fact, if you notice, in February, I wrote an article decrying all mathematical models. I said they are junk.
Correct.
They have to decide they will not work. What I'm trying to say, and I'll give you 2 points on which I'd like each one of you to make a comment. Ben Israel has not made a model. All he has done is he has studied data for all the countries that have been affected by the virus, and he has seen something common. What he says is it plays itself out in closed environments in 70 days. Now, here's what I'll tell you. I made a prediction beginning of May based on what Ben Israel has done. I looked at his graphs. I looked at all the data he had studied. That Dharavi will start getting out of the problem by the end of May. And I've been modeling Dharavi regularly through this data. And as we speak, I can tell you Dharavi is beginning to come down. The number of infections is coming down.
Correct.
So this virus plays itself out in 70 days. Provided you don't do Dharavi, they have closed the environment. They're not letting people come inside. It's working. And my prediction stands from 1st of May. So it does work in these situations. But here's something I want to comment on, all three panelists. That, in the beginning of April, in fact, I think sometime in March, there were these 4 scientists at Houston, at the medical center, who looked at data for coronavirus in 178 countries, and they saw a strong correlation between the low number of deaths and BCG vaccination programs. I wonder if you have to make any comment. I would like each one of you to make some comments on this, because India has had a strong BCG vaccination program. Do you think it is working for it?
Yeah, I will take this. I tell you why it's very interesting that if you look at the data, the death per million and incidence per million, if you look at this number, which is to normalize this number, you can get this in the world tracker of the coronavirus data. Highest is 5,279 for infected per million for USA, and death is about 309 per million. Brazil is around 2,000 and death is 120. Russia is 2,598 incidents per million, but death is only 28. Okay. Now, if you look through Spain, 6,000, 5,080, UK, 4,000 incidents, 552, Italy, 547 death per million, France, 438, Germany is 102. Yes. Now, if you ask me, is BCG given in Germany? Answer is yes. Is BCG given in India? Answer is yes. So if I bring down this number, for India, death per million is 3 and incidence per million is 115. We are 10th rank. Below us, total number is less, Iran, but Iran's is 175 million infected and 91 per million deaths. Peru, 4,000 infected, 121 per million deaths. Canada, 2,300 infected, 179 per million deaths. China, 58 infected per million, 3 deaths. interestingly, Pakistan, whose numbers are still not gone up very high, but 278 per million infected, but death is 6. So my interesting observation that I have, that the countries where tuberculosis infection is very high per lakh, actually death is little low. Okay? And so Russia is one which has a very high tuberculosis. This is why it struck me.
Right.
India is one of the highest in the world. Same thing is Pakistan and Bangladesh. So therefore, and Indonesia, and I have the numbers of tuberculosis incidents. So I have done a 2x2 plot. And when you do it, you will expect 4 quadrant. And the quadrant with high TB incidence, high COVID is absent. There's no country in that region. And there is a low COVID, large TB. Of course, there is low TB distribution is all across because each country is at different stages. So therefore, coming to BCG, and that's why my faith was on MW, because all are linked to tuberculosis. Okay. So BCG vaccination, having, what is BCG? You are actually creating a little bit of TB, creating in you, which will not create the disease. Am I right?
Yes.
So that you are protected. You have your antibody protected. 1/3 of us are infected already with tuberculosis, but it is latent. And I'm sure Khamar will say original idea we had that we will handle the latent TB using MW, but unfortunately it didn't work on the adult. Am I right? It worked well with the children, but not with the adult. If I remember the data, it's very old for my memory. But so therefore, I think a combination of things are working. It is not a single combination. So if you try to build one relationship, I will say it will not work. If you look at tuberculosis incidents in America, during Industrial Revolution, New York became a TB epidemic center. And why? Because they created accommodations where industrial workers were staying very conglomerate without windows.
Right.
Subsequently, the famous Koch hypothesis, tuberculosis, understanding, infection, close relationship. New York changed the building bylaw, and that you cannot have a building without windows, cross ventilation windows. So therefore, I think it is a good opportunity for us, while we worry about post-COVID, while we understand why it has happened, why it is giving us protection, we also can take forward and make that our country TB-free, which is one of the SDG target, 2030 target. So my feeling is, yes, there is something happening, whether it is giving protection to cytokine surge inhibition, whether it is giving an innate immunity, and many other infections has some relationship. And we also found that there are regions of India where malarial allele has been fixed, ApoE1 allele, which are in the eastern part of India, and they have linked to an ACE1 polymorphism, insertion deletion polymorphism, which is linked to ACE2 expression. So if you have a less ACE2 expression, then your chances risk is low. So malaria infected regions, there is a correlation. We have, that is an incident. But unfortunately, both the western part of India, Rajasthan, Maharashtra, Gujarat, that allele, malaria fixation allele in the population is low. So therefore, there is a genetics of the host, the BCG vaccination possibility. There is a hygiene hypothesis that we live with a lot of other infections. Then maybe our tuberculosis infections that is latent in us, which has become endemic, and other infections like malaria, dengue, all this might be giving us some protection. And that's why you are seeing that all mathematical models about India, because all my Harvard professors, friends call me that what is happening in India, why it is not happening, why it is being less. So this is my
You ask
perception.
me, Imperial College came up with a stupid mathematical model. I say this publicly.
Yeah.
It's stupid mathematical model.
Yeah.
And it is ranked amongst the top 5-6 universities in the world. Can you beat that?
Yep.
Say something on this.
Okay. Since Dr. Brahmachari started with tuberculosis and BCG, I'll start with that. So BCG originally started with an idea that like cures like. So if you have a BCG vaccine which is inactivated relatively, you may get rid of tuberculosis, and that will give you a significant amount of protection lifetime. And that's the reason wherever it is practiced, it is practiced at the time of birth. Now, at the time of birth, the only immune mechanism which works is the innate immune mechanism. BCG, by that mechanism, works through an innate immunity. Now, good part about the BCG is it was available at that point in time and people propagated, and there's a lot of literature generated and a lot of science generated around it. But the key component of the BCG and efficacy is that everybody has now agreed that BCG does not protect against tuberculosis. It provides limited protection, and that's the reason it is being practiced in the countries where still tuberculosis is rampant. And that limited protection is that disseminated tuberculosis, which happens in the first year of life, is minimized if you have BCG. There are a lot of confounding factors, but BCG is still in this country and other countries. If you look at it in terms of innate immunity and BCG in a small dose, which is never given, induces Th1 type of response. But in a dose which is given, it is inducing Th2 type of a response. Two type of a response makes equal to various infections. And that's the reason BCG in all throughout its history and usage has not found utility outside bladder cancer. It's only one indication where it is found useful, and there again it has to come in direct contact with the tumors, and it induces local inflammatory response where there are large number of white blood cells come into contact, and that tumor is eliminated. So that is how BCG works, and I can go on giving more and more. But now if you look at MW, and we were asked this question multiple times. So originally when we were working on MW, as Professor Brahmachari said, our chairman, Mr. Modi, was fond of Indian science and promoting Indian science. And somehow we felt that this product has something in it and we must continue working on it. And that's why we spending money, we spending resources and did various activities. But all throughout that journey, everybody was saying that this is a kind of a BCG and it is not likely to work. But then we analyze in details. So this is the only product available in the world which induces pure Th1 response. There has been efforts to make Th1 response enhancer, but those efforts were made by systemic side effects. So this is the only product as we speak which induces systemic Th1 type of response without any side
effect.
Okay. Now, if you look at it close to this, MW is TLR2 agonist, which is very potent. Even when we dilute it to 1 in 10,000, it retained that activity. BCG is TLR2 and 4 agonist, mainly TLR4. And then you come to the Th1 response enhancer. The only other approved Th1 response enhancer is TLR7 agonist, which is known as imiquimod. but it cannot be given systemically. It has to be applied on the skin. Now, with that knowledge, we continue our development, and I'll just summarize what do we know. So, MW being pure Th1 enhancer, TLR2 agonist, it also has a certain peculiar features like COVID-19 that is endosomal TLRs, which are locationally within the cytoplasm of the cell, which are known as TLR 7, 8, 9, 3, and part of TLR 4. So when they are upregulated, on its own, it has no effect on these TLRs. When they are upregulated by whatever mechanism, it downregulates them. Then come back to the comparison with BCG and MW. BCG